These parks don't usually have the massive crowds of Yellowstone or the non-stop traffic jams of Yosemite. You won't find souvenir shops on every corner or tour buses lined up at sunrise. In fact, some of these places are so remote, so quiet, and so overlooked, it can feel like you accidentally discovered a secret piece of America. Imagine walking across endless white dunes in New Mexico that glow like fresh snow under the moonlight. Or kayaking beside glaciers in remote Alaska with nobody else in sight. There are volcanic lakes so blue they almost look fake, desert canyons that swallow all sound, and rugged wilderness islands ruled by wolves and moose. Some of these spots are so remote that simply getting there is half the adventure. But that's exactly what makes them special. So lace up your hiking boots, fill up the gas tank, and make sure you've got your camera. Today we're counting down 15 U.S. national parks most people skip, but are absolutely worth the trip. Number 1. White Sands, New Mexico. If we're being honest, White Sands doesn't feel like a real place. You leave behind the dry highways and desert towns of southern New Mexico, and suddenly the landscape turns completely white, like somebody covered the desert in fresh snow. But those dunes aren't snow at all. They're made of gypsum sand, and according to the National Park Service, this is the world's largest gypsum dune field, stretching across roughly 275 square miles. And somehow, despite looking like one of the most surreal landscapes in America, White Sands still gets skipped by many travelers heading toward bigger name parks in Utah or Arizona, which is a big mistake. The people who actually go there go for the sledding. The park allows visitors to bring their own sleds or buy them at the gift shop near the visitor center, which also offers a sled buyback program. Some of the best sledding spots are near the Alkali Flat trailhead at the end of the Dunes Drive. But if you don't like to take it to the extreme, then you can hike the Alkali Flat Trail. It's a strenuous 5-mile loop route through the heart of the dunes, and the views are absolutely endless. The National Park Service recommends bringing plenty of water because there's no shade, and summer temperatures average around 95 degrees Fahrenheit to 97 degrees Fahrenheit, though they can sometimes climb above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Even though getting there is pretty straightforward, one thing you do need to know is that Dunes Drive occasionally closes temporarily, because it sits beside the White Sands Missile Range, and on rare occasions the entire park may close during missile tests, so it's smart to check the park alerts before visiting. Admission is paid, not free. A private vehicle costs a flat $25 for a standard pass, valid for 7 days, while children ages 15 and under enter for free. And that includes parking inside the park, so there's no separate parking fee. The park also observes select fee-free days throughout the year. Number 2. North Cascades, Washington. North Cascades National Park feels like the kind of place that should be world famous. Yet somehow it remains one of the least visited national parks in the United States, frequently ranking in the top 5 least visited national parks, with only 30,000 to 46,000 visitors per year. Part of the reason it stays underrated is that there aren't many big tourist towns or luxury lodges surrounding the park, as you'll find near Yellowstone or Yosemite. But the park is packed with jagged mountain peaks, massive glaciers, alpine lakes, and dense evergreen forests that feel more like the Swiss Alps than Washington State. In fact, the National Park Service says the North Cascades has more than 300 glaciers, more than any other U.S. park outside Alaska. One of the best ways to experience the park is by driving the North Cascades Highway, also known as State Route 20. The road cuts directly through the mountains and passes dramatic viewpoints like Diablo Lake Overlook, where the water glows with an almost unreal turquoise color caused by glacial sediment. And surprisingly, admission to North Cascades National Park is completely free. Number 3. Capitol Reef National Park, Utah. Capitol Reef National Park is probably the most overlooked of Utah's famous Mighty Five. And honestly, that's hard to understand once you actually drive through it. You're surrounded by massive sandstone cliffs that rise out of the desert, narrow canyons that twist through the rock, and colorful layers of red, orange, and gold that stretch for miles across something called the Water Pocket Fold, a nearly 100-mile-long wrinkle in the Earth's crust that the National Park Service describes as a geologic monocline. What makes this park feel different from the others in Utah is the mix of rugged desert scenery and surprising pockets of green. If you want to hike with an incredible payoff, the Hickman Bridge Trail is one of the park's classics. It leads to a massive natural bridge rising high above the canyon floor. Getting here takes a little more effort than Utah's better-known parks, which is probably one reason Capitol Reef stays underrated. The park sits along Utah State Route 24 near the small town of Torrey, roughly 3.5 hours from Salt Lake City. And surprisingly, driving the highway and hiking the main trails is completely free, though you will need to pay a $20 private vehicle fee if you decide to explore the park's specific historical scenic drive. Number 4. Lake Clark National Park. According to the National Park Service, there are no roads leading to Lake Clark National Park. Can you guess now why most casual tourists don't visit it? But since you're not one of them and you're willing to make the effort, this place delivers some of the wildest scenery in America. You'll find massive glaciers, active volcanoes, turquoise lakes, salmon-filled rivers, and huge stretches of untouched wilderness that feel almost impossible in the modern world. One of the biggest reasons people come here is to see brown bears. Lake Clark is one of Alaska's most famous bear viewing destinations, especially around places like Chinitna Bay and Silver Salmon Creek, where bears gather along the coast to feed on sedges, clams, and seasonal salmon runs. The park is also home to 2 active volcanoes, Mount Redoubt and Mount Iliamna, which tower above the surrounding landscape. Flight-seeing tours are popular because they reveal just how enormous and remote the region really is. To get there, most visitors fly from Anchorage to small communities like Port Allsworth using air taxis or charter flights because there are no roads connecting the park to Alaska's highway system. And because services inside the park are extremely limited, the National Park Service strongly recommends planning ahead for lodging, transportation, food, and safety gear before arriving. But the good news is, once you're there, admission to Lake Clark National Park is completely free. Number 5. Great Basin National Park, Nevada. Tucked away in eastern Nevada near the Utah border, Great Basin National Park gets a fraction of the visitors you'll find at places like Zion or Bryce Canyon. Yet it has everything from sagebrush desert valleys to alpine lakes, glaciers, and the towering 13,063-foot Wheeler Peak. What makes the park feel so underrated is the sheer variety packed into one remote area. You can start the morning surrounded by dry desert landscapes and finish the afternoon standing among ancient bristlecone pine trees, some of the oldest living organisms on Earth. The National Park Service says certain bristlecone pines in the park are estimated to be more than 4,000 years old. Getting here takes some planning because the park is far from major cities, but one of the best surprises is that entrance into Great Basin National Park is completely free, and there's no parking fee for regular day use areas, though you will need to purchase a ticket if you want to tour the famous underground Lehman Caves. Number 6. Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park, Colorado. Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park is one of the most shockingly underrated parks in the American West. The canyon is incredibly steep, incredibly narrow, and unbelievably dark in places, which is exactly how it earned its name. In fact, some sections of the canyon receive only 33 minutes of sunlight per day. That's because the walls here drop almost straight down toward the Gunnison River, with cliffs plunging as deep as 2,722 feet. Most visitors explore the South Rim Drive, a scenic road with overlooks like Gunnison Point, Chasm View, and Painted Wall View. Painted Wall is especially impressive because it overlooks the tallest cliff in Colorado, rising roughly 2,250 feet above the river. If you want to hike, the Rimrock Nature Trail offers incredible views without being too difficult, while more adventurous travelers sometimes attempt the park's steep inner canyon routes, which require a mandatory wilderness permit and are warned by the National Park Service to be extremely strenuous and unmaintained. Getting here is easier than many people expect. The South Rim entrance sits about 15 minutes east of Montrose, Colorado, which has regional flights and services nearby, and a standard private vehicle pass is around $30. Number 7. Isle Royale National Park, Michigan. Now we're going to be honest, getting to Isle Royale National Park in Michigan takes real effort. Ferries operate seasonally from Michigan and Minnesota ports like Houghton, Copper Harbor, and Grand Portage, while seaplanes also fly to this remote island wilderness out in the middle of Lake Superior during the warmer months. Isle Royale is made up of one large island and more than 400 smaller surrounding islands, creating a rugged wilderness filled with rocky shorelines, dense forests, inland lakes, and hidden coves. This park is famous for hiking and kayaking because there's so little development compared to most national parks. The Greenstone Ridge Trail is one of the park's signature hikes, stretching for 40 miles. Plus, Isle Royale is internationally known for its long-running wolf and moose research project, one of the longest predator-prey studies in the world. Visitors 16 and older must pay a daily entrance fee of $7 per day, though you can opt for a $60 park season pass if your stay is longer, and there's no parking fee inside the park itself. Number 8. Gates of the Arctic National Park, Arctic Circle. Gates of the Arctic National Park is probably the closest thing the United States has to true, untouched wilderness, and that's exactly why so few people visit it. There are no roads, no trails, and no established campgrounds inside the park. This isn't the kind of national park where you can pull up to an on-site visitor center, park beside a scenic overlook, and walk a paved trail for an hour. Instead, the main information centers sit entirely outside its borders, as Gates of the Arctic is enormous, stretching across more than 8 million acres of Alaska's Brooks Range. And in many parts of the park, you may not see another person for days. Instead, you'll find jagged mountains, braided rivers, tundra valleys, and landscapes so untouched they feel frozen in time. During summer, the sun barely sets, while in colder months, the northern lights often ripple across the sky. Most people visit Gates of the Arctic for backpacking, rafting, fishing, and wildlife viewing. The park is home to caribou, grizzly bears, wolves, moose, and Dall sheep. But before you go to this admission-free park, the National Park Service strongly recommends having extensive wilderness experience and completing careful trip planning. Number 9. Dry Tortugas National Park, Florida. Dry Tortugas National Park sits out in the middle of the ocean. It's located about 70 miles west of Key West and is only accessible by boat or seaplane. But whether you arrive by ferry or seaplane, you're crossing open water until a massive brick fortress slowly rises out of the horizon. That's Fort Jefferson, one of the largest 19th century masonry forts in the world, built on a remote island in the Gulf of Mexico. Once you step off the boat, the first thing you notice is how impossibly clear the water is. This park is famous for snorkeling and swimming around coral reefs, where visitors can see tropical fish and marine life just a short distance from shore. If you want to stay longer, the park also allows primitive camping on Garden Key, but the National Park Service emphasizes that visitors must be fully self-sufficient because there are no stores, services, or lodging on the islands. And all this beauty can be accessed by paying the standard entry fee of $15 per person for ages 16 and older, which is already included in your ticket if you arrive via the official ferry, while children 15 and under enter for free. Number 10. Canyonlands, Utah. If you took the entire desert landscape of Utah and stretched it to impossible proportions, you'd get Canyonlands. Massive canyons split the earth in every direction, towering mesas rise above the desert floor, and the Colorado and Green Rivers carve through the landscape like giant cracks running across another planet. The park preserves 337,000 acres of colorful canyons, mesas, buttes, fens, arches, and spires, but it's often overlooked. Part of the reason for this is that the park is so enormous and spread out. Canyonlands is divided into 4 separate districts: Island in the Sky, the Needles, the Maze, and the rivers themselves. One of the park's most famous viewpoints is Mesa Arch, especially at sunrise when the underside of the arch glows bright orange from the morning light. Another highlight is Grand View Point, where short walking trails lead to sweeping panoramic views over the canyon system below. More adventurous travelers often head into the Needles district for longer hikes among colorful sandstone spires and remote backcountry trails. Once you get there from Moab, admission is paid. The National Park Service lists the standard private vehicle entrance for $30 or $15 per person. Number 11. Congaree National Park, South Carolina. Congaree National Park is probably one of the most misunderstood national parks in America. That's because, unlike other national parks, this one's home to one of the largest intact old-growth bottomland hardwood forests remaining in the United States. The park protects some of the tallest trees in eastern North America, creating a forest that feels almost prehistoric when you walk through it. One of the best ways to experience the park is the Boardwalk Loop Trail, an elevated walkway that allows visitors to explore the floodplain forest without needing serious hiking experience. If you want something more adventurous, kayaking and canoeing along Cedar Creek are incredibly popular because they let you glide directly through the heart of the forest beneath enormous trees and over calm blackwater channels. Congaree is also famous for its synchronous fireflies. During late spring, thousands of fireflies flash in coordinated patterns throughout parts of the park, creating one of the most unusual natural light displays in North America. The event has become so popular that the National Park Service now manages access through a lottery system. And one of the best surprises is that admission to Congaree National Park is completely free, parking and everything. Number 12. Teddy Roosevelt, North Dakota. Most travelers don't expect western North Dakota to have a flat prairie that gives way to colorful badlands, winding rivers, massive rock formations, and open grasslands filled with wildlife. In fact, it was this exact landscape that deeply influenced future President Theodore Roosevelt after he arrived in the Dakota Territory in the 1880s, eventually shaping his lifelong passion for conservation. And the best part? Wild horses are roaming through the grasslands, bison are grazing beside the roads, and prairie dog towns pop up unexpectedly across the landscape. Most visitors explore the South Unit near Medora, which features the park's famous Scenic Loop Drive. This winding road passes dramatic overlooks, colorful canyon formations, and some of the best wildlife viewing areas in the park. One of the highlights is the Painted Canyon Overlook, where layers of red, orange, and tan badlands stretch across the horizon in every direction. If you want to hike, the park has more than 100 miles of trails, ranging from easy walks to longer backcountry routes. The Wind Canyon Trail is especially popular because it offers sweeping views over the Little Missouri River and surrounding badlands. Oh, and admission is paid, with standard cashless rates of $30 per vehicle or $15 per person applying, as the park no longer accepts cash at the gate. Number 13. Lassen Volcanic National Park, California. Lassen is one of the few places on the entire Earth where all four major types of volcanoes can be found together: shield, composite, cinder cone, and plug dome volcanoes. In fact, as you drive through Lassen, you'll smell sulfur rising from the ground, see steaming fumaroles hissing beside boardwalks, and watch boiling mud pots bubble beneath the mountains. The most famous geothermal area is Bumpus Hell, a hydrothermal basin filled with steaming pools and vivid mineral colors. The Lassen Peak Trail is one of the park's signature hikes, climbing toward the summit of Lassen Peak, the largest plug dome volcano in the world. From the top, you can see huge stretches of Northern California wilderness. The Lassen Volcanic National Park Highway is also part of the experience. The scenic route cuts directly through the volcanic landscape and reaches elevations above 8,500 feet. But one thing travelers absolutely need to know is that heavy snowfall regularly closes portions of the highway during winter, and sometimes even into late spring or early summer. And of course, standard admission fees apply via cashless payment only at the gate. Number 14. Big Bend National Park, Texas, at night. Big Bend National Park feels like you're staring at the edge of the world. Tucked away in far southwest Texas along the Rio Grande, it's one of the largest and most remote national parks in the continental United States, which is exactly why so many travelers skip it. The park itself covers more than 800,000 acres of desert, mountains, canyons, and river landscapes. But the isolation is why Big Bend is perfect at night. During the day, you can drive through the Chihuahuan Desert surrounded by massive rock formations, then suddenly climb into the Chisos Mountains, the only mountain range completely contained within a U.S. national park. But honestly, Big Bend becomes something completely different at night. The park is internationally famous for its dark skies. The National Park Service states that Big Bend has the least light pollution of any national park unit in the lower 48 states. Once the sun disappears, the stars completely take over the sky. You can see the Milky Way stretching overhead so clearly that it almost looks painted across the desert. It's the kind of darkness most people in modern cities have never experienced before. The park sits several hours from major Texas cities, with Midland and El Paso both serving as common starting points for road trips into the region. Admission is standard and paid via cashless payment only. And because services inside the park are spread far apart, the National Park Service strongly recommends carrying extra water, food, and fuel. But it's well worth it when you see the night sky. Number 15. Crater Lake National Park, Oregon. The lake in Crater Lake National Park was formed when Mount Mazama collapsed after a massive volcanic eruption about 7,700 years ago. What you find here is not just a lake, but the deepest lake in the United States, reaching about 1,943 feet at its deepest point, which the National Park Service highlights as one of its defining features. And when you first see it, it almost doesn't look real. The water is so deep and clear that the lake appears to glow, especially when framed by the steep volcanic cliffs that surround it, a result of its caldera formation. Getting here is relatively straightforward, with most visitors entering from nearby towns like Klamath Falls or Medford in southern Oregon, as outlined by the National Park Service directions page. Admission is paid, with the National Park Service listing a standard peak season private vehicle pass at $30, valid for 7 days, payable via cashless payment options only at the entrance gates. If you're looking for beautiful but unexplored nature, then visiting each one of these parks is a must. Now, some of our picks do need a little more planning and preparation than others, but if you're up for the challenge, that's half the fun. So the only thing left to do now is figure out when you can clear your calendar for your next big adventure and start planning the trip.